there you go.
Welcome,
Hey,
Larry.
well, all right. Well, again, yeah, my name's, well, actually, I'll tell you my real name. My real name, where I was born, is Willie Larry Jefferson Jr. It's kind of the tradition that my dad set up was to be named exactly the same name that he had. Now, incidentally, you know, I was born in the 70s there. And then my brother, who was born in the 80s during a more conservative period of time, he got Baba Azizi Tucker. Why couldn't I be Baba Azizi Tucker? But anyways, my name is Larry Jefferson, and the Supreme Court in May appointed me to be the new Director of Public Defense for the state of Washington. But before I talk more about that, I just thought, well, you don't know me, you don't know who I am, and sort of whose shoulders that I'm on. And so in my family, we've been able to trace our roots back to a woman named Carrie Crawford Smith. And she was born in 1877 in Tennessee. And it just so happened that in 1887, she was able to graduate from Fisk University. And so I think that's pretty amazing that during that period of time, which is also like the Great Compromise, it's when the North pulled soldiers out of the South and began a reign of domestic terrorism, which in my mind has not ended to this day, and takes place in various forms, which shows up all over the landscape. But in that period of time, those 20 years, she was able to gain that education. She went on to become a teacher, and then in Chicago in 1919, she founded a Black employment agency. And so, you know, I just Googled her. Her name comes up, and as part of women's history, and that employment agency she ran till 1954. My grandmother, Louise, went on to work at the Chicago Sun-Times. So she was the first Black woman to work there on the printing press floor. And what she was able to do was find a house for us in Evanston. This Evanston was the suburbs, and so only white folks lived there. But my grandmother found someone to sell her a house, even though there was a covenant that said, you can't, we're not going to sell to Black people. But she was able to get that house. Coincidentally, Evanston is the first community to address reparations in the United States. I think for people that lived there between 1919 and 1969. And so it's interesting that they have that program. My family was lucky. And so what I found in my life, that house had just a tremendous effect on us. And I only lived there for approximately about 7 years. But one of the reasons that I lived there was that my mom's first relationship ended in domestic violence. And it really shapes who I am. And she had a choice of where to go when my father, you know, didn't know how to control himself and his behavior. And he took it out on my mother, and some of the first experiences that I had. And so since she had that house to go back to, that's one of the main reasons that I can stand here before you today, because she was able to sort of like get her life kind of back together. And she went off and went to college, and she took me with her. And so I came to Olympia in 1980, and my mom went to Evergreen. A few years later, I followed her, and I went to Evergreen. I then went to law school at the university. Puget Sound School of Law doesn't exist anymore. And so I've kind of had a, you know, not a traditional kind of upbringing, not traditional schooling. I was horrible in school, like 7th grade. I wasn't going to make it past. So I went through a lot of alternative programs in order to make it to college. And then I graduated when I was 20, became a lawyer by 24. I worked as a public defender for 25 years. And I did primarily sex offense cases, murder cases, those types of cases. I did spend 5 years in juvenile court, and that experience in juvenile court completely changed my life. You see, when I first got to court, what I wanted to do was to get a witness up on the witness stand, and I wanted to destroy them. I wanted to have Perry Mason moments, and I wanted to break them over my knee, and as I sat down, everyone would know that I was victorious. I didn't even need to do a closing argument. I was that good. That's what I wanted to happen. And as a public defender, you don't get to pick your cases, and they give you a lot of them. And so you're sitting there and you realize that you can only really have these fantastic moments, maybe 12 times a year, because that'd be going to trial a lot for a trial attorney. But mainly you would get this moment maybe once or twice a year, but you're representing hundreds of people during that year for 2 moments. So when I went to juvenile court, what I realized was all these young folks, they wanted to go home. They were like, Mr. Jefferson, I would like to go home right now. I don't want to be in jail anymore. I don't want to deal with this case anymore. I don't want to be at court anymore. In fact, I don't even know what's happening in court because I want to get out of here and I want to go home. And so they had something that was stopping them. It was either domestic violence, drugs, or just whatever it was going on in that young person's life. And so I realized that the case that brought them there didn't really matter. It was just sort of like a symptom of something. And so if I could sort of solve that, I wouldn't see that kid again. And so I was involved in juvenile drug court. I really loved that. I really loved seeing kids. Didn't matter what they said, but it mattered where they put their body. So if they showed up for class and all those types of things, didn't matter if they were disrespectful or all those kind of things, didn't matter because they were there and they could graduate from the program. But you couldn't listen to what they said because some kids would say the most amazing things, and then that night they go out and do something horrible or something that was really hard to recover from to keep them in the program. And so we had to make other choices for them. And so when I came back to adult court, what I realized that a lot of my adult cases didn't matter either. I mean, the case was important, but what I have found in the criminal justice system is that it is very traumatic, and that court is a very traumatic court experience. I had some dealings with doing shelter cares, and the attorneys that I knew said that those hearings were not very important and they weren't very hard, and that, since there's no juries, it is really easy. And so I had the experience of doing one, and it was unbelievable. I got a packet of materials handed to me. I got a client, and they said, we're going to do this hearing in 5 minutes, and the state just took their kid. And you've got to ramp up and do this hearing. And I fought in that hearing as much as I could. I was just throwing names, all sorts of things. And then the judge said, okay, we're going to establish that there needs to be a finding here. The state's going to keep their kid. Now, what I want you to do is go back and make friends with them. I was like, what? I'm going to make friends with these people? I just called them names. I just tried everything I knew in the book so that they can walk out of here with their kids. And now you're telling me to go make friends with them. I'm not making friends with nobody. That is not happening. Never, ever. Wait. If I don't make friends with them, they won't get their kids back? Wait a second. Let me go to this family team decision meeting, okay? And I went to my first one, and it's very confusing because I wasn't a star. I'm an attorney. Why are these other people talking? Who are they? Who's this person? What's a CASA? I don't know what that is. Shoot. I mean, restaurant, I don't know. So
So it was really hard for me to adjust at first to doing those types of hearings, but there was a magic in it. And the magic was that these folks were all around this table. And there was a magic that if I listened to my client, right, and knew what sort of they wanted and what their issues were. When I mean listen, I don't mean like a 5-minute, like just before we go in here, tell me what you want. I really mean that you needed to do hours before you did any of that. You really had to review the case, and you really had to seek out other resources. And so I remember that I got a soldier who had been to Afghanistan, had a 10-year career in the armed forces, and that she had some little folks in her life. And on one evening, she pulled out a weapon around those folks because she was suffering from PTSD. State came in and took her case. And so the way that we have our justice system right now is you have the sort of the civil case and you got the criminal case, and they're separated. But what I found with the family team decision meeting is that you can combine them, because if this person was taking care of all the services that were being provided with DSHS, that would also resolve the issue with your criminal case. And in fact, if we wanted to have the child involved in this person's life, and this person's doing everything that they need to do, then it didn't really make sense to penalize this person with a criminal conviction so they could not provide for their child anymore. And so that experience really sort of changed me for this. Also within that change was working with folks who are social workers. I found that was critical to my success on any case where I could get a family to get peer support, someone that they could talk to outside of court that was not a lawyer, was a plus. And I'm not meaning to denigrate lawyers. Lawyers are great, do great stuff in courtrooms. That's wonderful. But what we don't do is we don't go to grocery stores. We don't go clothes shopping. Generally, we do stuff in courtrooms. We don't help people get hotel rooms. We don't take out 2 hours of our day to listen to all of the things that are going on with their life. And this is what I found to be more important than the lawyer, was that a more person's listened to, the more person gets attention, the better they feel about the particular issue. And I just go back to a childhood experience. I told you my mom took me to college, right? And she didn't have a babysitter. So that meant if there's a college party, she took me, all right? And so I would go. As a kid, there's all these adults, and it's really boring because they're doing adult stuff. They're talking about, I don't know, whatever you talked about in like 1982 or 1980. I didn't care about it, but I had to go. And there was a gentleman, and there was these handheld football games, and that gentleman sat down with me for maybe half an hour, and he played that game with me. He paid attention to me. I didn't have to act out or kick anybody. He just sat down and paid attention to Larry Jefferson. And I'm 50-something years old, and I still remember that kindness. I don't remember his name, but I remember that kindness. And I think that's the kind of thing that I want to do. And here at the Office of Public Defense, what we do is we represent people. And there's a couple of things that are in the way of doing that in the way that I want to do it. Because I think that if you have a legal issue, you need a lawyer. And we don't provide that. We wait until something gets to be really traumatic. We have these courts that resolve these issues. And then we wait until that court until we do that. And we also have this thing called the Constitution, and also like these statutory rules about how you get lawyers. And so I think in one instance, that sounds great. You get constitutionally guaranteed to get counsel, and it's statutorily ordered. what that tells me is you're only my lawyer because you have to be. And that's not why I want to be someone's lawyer. I want to be someone's lawyer because they need help. All right. And in my estimation, you shouldn't get help just based on the size of your wallet, but you should get help based on the justness of your cause. If you have a just cause, then you get a lawyer. If you have a just cause, then you get all the stuff that comes from the lawyer. And for me, what that comes with is that comes with peer support. That comes with a social worker. That comes with an investigator. That comes with getting referrals to whatever it is that you need. Because for some reason, you're in the court system, whether it's because you're dealing with some child issues that you're having. Why can't we turn mandated reporters into mandated helpers? That's where we want to be. And that's where OPD wants to be. So OPD wants to be for anybody who walks anywhere in the state of Washington. We want to represent you. And so far, that is not our mandate. We are more like your grandmother's quilt. So some parts of grandmother's quilt are so nice. Oh, you're like, oh my goodness. And what that is representative of is the Parents Representation Program. This program is nationally recognized. Some of you know many of the program managers, and they are doing great work. Do they need some more resources? Do they need some more money? Yes, they do. And they need that money in the form of whatever is humanly centered to reduce people's trauma from being involved in court. So one of the things I'm really excited about right now is something called the First Clinic. I don't know if you know about the First Clinic, but what they're doing is they are representing women who either CPS or someone is recognized that's having a problem, either when they're giving birth or 6 months in or whenever. And they're not waiting until a case gets filed in order to give them help. They're saying, hey, we recognize that you might need an assistance. Here's a lawyer. Boom, that's exactly where I want to be. And the lawyer goes, oh my God, you got some lawyer issues. And guess what the lawyer says? He says, you should work with this person. Okay, so, and the First Clinic, that's Gina Wassermiller. Oh, Gina Wassermiller. She's amazing. You can look her up. There's like movies going on about what this woman is doing. And she's tough too. She's like a fighter and a boxer and she's done massage and she's doing amazing critical work. And that's the kind of work that we want to support here at OPD. I don't care whether a case is filed or not. I care about whether someone needs some assistance, and assistance that is not like sort of state directed assistance, which is them saying, hey, something's been recognized. These are the things that I need to help me through this situation. And so one of the areas I guess that's critical for OPD is no matter whether we do it or not, is to emphasize that someone gets a lawyer. And so we see this is going in a general trend. So I don't know if you know about House Bill 1140. What that does is it makes sure that juveniles get an attorney if the cops are making a phone call. We know about tenants' rights, that tenants sometimes need a lawyer because they're being kicked out of their house. So we have made that switch. And now we're getting used to children, I believe 8 and up, who are getting access now to an attorney. And so what that shows to me is that people are getting the general hint that if they got a legal issue, they need an attorney. And I want us to continue that trend. That's where we want to be. As far as the legal profession is concerned itself, we're in need of attorneys, and especially attorneys to go into rural communities and work there. We're in need of creating programs that allow new attorneys to work with older attorneys. And also what we need to mix up in there is we need to create programs where you not only get an attorney, but you get a social worker or you get a peer support person as well. Because while the attorney might be able to handle a specific legal issue, it's usually some sort of trauma that has occurred. Because, and I'll finish up here in a second, it turns out, and this is pretty crazy, it turns out that there are no evil babies. Like, I have never met an evil baby. Like, that baby is evil. Oh my goodness, that's an evil baby. Can you believe that? Baby killing people. And what happens is that babies are born, and my theory is they're really excited to meet the new folks that they've heard about for the last 9 months, but they are born, and either because of generational trauma, because we have not healed from sort of 3 major issues, and that is that the land that we're on, and I'm on Coast Salish and Squaxin Island, Nisqually land. This land was stolen. So this isn't ceded territory. This land was stolen, and we haven't come to grips with that yet. I don't think in a satisfactory way. We also haven't come to grips with the fact that people were stolen from Africa and made to work under conditions which are, we don't even want to watch on TV. That's what we did to people. I mean, like, you wouldn't even want to watch it. Or some, I don't know if we saw that show Underground Railroad. Yeah, I mean, that was too much, and or caused tears, and you just didn't treat people right. And then stolen labor. So we've stolen labor from folks for as long as, well, we haven't come to terms with it. And so those 3 things really affect us, and affected us so much that now I've lost my train of thought. But that is the stuff that I am working on. I am trying to work on reducing mass incarceration in all its forms. And one of the forms is, folks who are involved in foster care. So I'm trying to create places where people get to stay with their kin as much as possible, or other family that they know as much as possible. And I'm also trying to learn. And there's a lot of things that I have to learn about you and about how we together, because it's not just, we get to do this together. If we wait until we're at a court date in order to try to figure something out, it's too late. So we need to work together because I think we want to work for families. I think we want to help our neighbors and us to all love one another. I think one of the great things I've been able to do since coming to this position is go to a reunification day. There is nothing better than to see a family reunited. There is nothing better to seeing that community that stands there and claps and goes, yeah, way, what hard work you did. And so what I want us to do, I don't want us to wait for a shelter care. I don't want us to wait for a court case. I want us to do what should be done for all of those babies. Is that each baby in my mind gets 5 human beings, and those 5 human beings help that little person to grow into the magical person that they're going to be. Because I also want to change the name of DCYF. I want to change it to DMCYF, the Department of Magical Children. Because I don't know any children that aren't magical. Don't know them. Doesn't exist. Does not exist. I mean, just the other night, I was leaving my office, and there was a woman standing out there, and there was a kid, and I was walking by him. And then all of a sudden, hey, I recognize that kid. And it was the kid of one of my employees. And that kid was so magical, hired on the spot. I know you're not supposed to hire people under the age of 16, but I hired her, boom, 3 years old. 3 years old. And because that's the kind of community that I want to be a part of, a community where we help each other, we love each other, we play together, and then at sometimes that we have difficult conversations. with one another, especially some of those difficult conversations right now, or issues, especially of race. If we think about boarding schools that where folks of indigenous backgrounds were taken to boarding schools to have their cultures erased, we need to not do that anymore. So there's some things that we need to do some reading on, so that when these things come up for us in court, we no longer remain silent, that we take an anti-racist stance. And so sometimes that's going to mean that some attorneys are going to take a more aggressive stance when they think they see a racism or an ism. And it's going to feel really uncomfortable. It's not going to feel good. And first thing is we're not going to want to talk about it. But I think where we want to get to is where we can talk about those things, because it sometimes turns out that one of the traumas that we suffered when we were growing up from a baby is learning things that are racist, even that I learned. And so sometimes I might make a mistake and I need to learn from it. But if people don't stand up and say something, I don't get that opportunity. So I think there's all areas where we've been hurt. We might have an opportunity to learn. And there's other areas where we haven't been hurt, where we get opportunities to share. So I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. I hope that you've learned a little bit something about me. And it's been great to sort of talk to you. And it's been a real pleasure to be here. So if anybody has any questions or anything, that'd be great. All right. Well, Tanya, I appreciate the claps. That's pretty helpful.
That was one of the most inspiring lunch hours I've had.
Well, thank you. I'm really touched. The Tanya knows that I'm just this is just who Larry Jefferson is. But I'd love to learn from one of you what you think are some of the important issues that are happening right now. Because one of the functions of my job is I'm supposed to talk to the legislature, and I travel around the state. Okay, I see a question there. So what I say is I'm traveling around the state, and I'm talking to different lawmakers and things of that nature. And so the more information I have, I was just in Yakima, Ephrata, Sunnyside, because those are areas that I don't normally go to. So I need more information about them, so that when I'm deciding things over in Olympia, I want to make sure that we're getting the right services all across the state. Because to me, we've got justice by geography. So if you live in the I-5, you've got more access to services than if you live in certain rural communities. And I don't think that's fair. And I want to fight to change that and to think of unique ways that serve those communities. I really want to team forces with communities, especially county commissioners, to ask for the things that they need, because the burdens on cities and counties have risen, but with not a lot of support from the state, especially in the criminal justice arena. So we want to rectify that. I'm gonna look at this chat for a second. Well, where am I in my sort of the transformation of OPD? I've been here since May, so a lot of it is just learning what other folks do. We've gone through sort of a strategic planning session. It's also me getting used to my advisory committee and how to use them to do things. And just try to figure out the budgetary process for the legislature, because I might find that I have some funds available to do new and different things, but there's a proviso. I can't use the funds I have. So that's really frustrating. I think one of my priorities, as I talk about social workers a lot and how much they're needed, and how much peer support is needed. So in the PRP frame, what I've done is for the legislature this year, that's where I've asked for the most amount of money. I don't know if I'm going to get it, but I think that that I need to prioritize what I speak, and what I speak has to be followed by dollars, or me climbing up a hill trying to get those dollars. And then I can have some credibility when I turn to people and say, yeah, I tried to get that and they said no. And I'm going to look for more alliances to get folks what they need. The other thing is, I talked about the first clinic. I'm so excited about this program. If I quit today from being the director, I would then go to Snohomish County and try and join the ABC Law Group to do this type of work, where because basically they were finding that 12 babies in Snohomish County were going into basically foster care a month, and they've been able to reduce that. I don't have all the numbers yet because it's a new program, but and with the cases they've gotten, they've been able to reduce it by 50 or 60%. And this means that families are kept together. Mom and baby are together. Sometimes mom might go to treatment. But even if the case does get filed, for instance, in Snohomish County, they already know their attorney when they go to that shelter care. So that's what I'm really excited about. And that's where I want to put more money. The other part of the transformation is doing more on the criminal justice side, reversing the effects of mass incarceration, and particularly giving people access to counsel for post-conviction issues. That's something I really want to make happen, because again, shouldn't be that it's just because you have money and that's the reason that you get to do a personal restraint petition, for instance. It shouldn't be that you just have money and that's the way that if you're in DOC that you are able to connect if you've got issues with termination or something like that. So we need to be able to improve communication, and hopefully I can find someone at Microsoft who will build some sort of thingy so you can communicate with somebody from DOC. I think it should be easy. Let's see, I'm looking in the chat. I'm getting down to Gabriel Smith. Yesterday in one of the sessions, the presenter talked about every child receiving their own attorney. I was wondering how that works and what will the CASA attorney relationship be like. I think that this is going to be pretty fascinating because I think at first, I talked about how I was told that shelter cares weren't very hard hearings and stuff like that. And as an attorney, there's a big learning curve about how you use this process to represent someone, but also try to do so in a way that is respectful of the other people who are in the court process. That's a really hard skill to learn. My personality is I'm more what an attorney language would call I'm social worky. So I'm about feelings and that kind of stuff. So for me, that relationship issue, I didn't really have issues with that in my practice because that's just the way that I was. But some attorneys are a little bit more, I don't know, lawyerly, more technical. And I think those are the issues where they're going to, I think everyone's going to be more helped if we can do more trauma-informed perspectives for when we're in court, if we're realizing how traumatizing it is just to be in the courthouse itself, and what that means, and have all the participants sort of on the same page for that. I think that would really go well towards that sort of CASA attorney relationship, because we're coming with some similar knowledge and perspectives about what's happening for this little person. The other part is that each attorney has their role to play. And so sometimes that's going to look difficult, but I don't think it's because the attorney is trying to hopefully be evil, but they have a client to represent and they have to do so in a certain way and follow certain rules of professional responsibility when they're doing that. So, okay, I'm going down. I see Ann McAvoy, who says, I have a wonderful opportunity to have programs such as Parent for Parents, peer support, and father engagement programs. What suggestions can you provide in the idea of having legal support for families for shelter care, such as families that are in FAR services, etc.? Well, this is a great question because I don't know what FAR services are. So this is one of those places where I get to have a learning experience where someone tells me or puts in the chat what that stands for. That would be helpful. But what this reminds me of is my primary goal for OPD is that if you have a legal issue, you should get an attorney. What I have found is that in areas of like kindred care, that does not happen. So my idea is that I want, in my world, families would get an attorney for a shelter care. If those issues are being noticed, what we're doing with First Clinic means that those attorneys could have been appointed months before any incident. If that's the case, why do we have to wait in order to get people the help that they need? So I would like attorneys to be appointed when someone needs help. I was just in a meeting yesterday with First Clinic, and they were talking about a service provider, and the service provider was going to call, CPS, and they said to the service provider, "Hey, why don't you call us first? You can still call CPS because you're a mandated reporter. We have no problem with that. But if you get us involved right now, then that client, has got someone helping them and an attorney to give them advice. Because if a person doesn't have access to an attorney, sometimes they tell things to folks based on advice that they got from family, friends, and other folks that isn't very helpful. And so we want to try to reduce that. And so I hope that answered part of your question, Ann. And I really appreciate Ryan, who put down here the family assessment response. Okay, all right. So that shows you that I only did a little bit of the dependency work right there, is what that says. And it would be interesting to me, and I'm just talking off the cuff about when these family assessments are done. It appears to me that folks don't have access to an attorney when these things are happening. And to me, that's when you need access to an attorney is right then. And so we're used to this waiting until someone is really traumatized in order to reluctantly give them an attorney that they don't know and that they didn't pick. That's one of the things I'm really frustrated about being a public defender, is that my clients didn't get to choose me. And that towards the end of my career, I had sort of like an internet presence about cases that I did. And so clients would be really excited about, oh, I got Larry Jefferson, he's awesome. But other clients would want me. And the more a client gets to have that choice, I think that we need to start putting that into our system. I know when I left, I wanted all my attorneys to have their own like internet, page and all that kind of stuff, because I wanted clients feel a lot better when they get to choose stuff. It makes things a lot easier than you're getting forced on some person that you don't know, dealing with like either the worst issues of your life or the worst day of your life, and some stranger who you don't know how many cases they have and all that kind of stuff. I want to choose my attorney. That's what rich people do. They choose their attorney. Why can't I do that? So I really would like to change some things about the legal profession. I would like it that you got one attorney and you didn't have to go get another one. The attorney goes and gets all the resources for you, or whoever that provider is that you first hit up with. Because I know for me, I had a son that went through a lot of legal issues, a lot of substance abuse. And it was really traumatic as we went from agency to agency. And they told us to tell the story each time. Right. So my wife, who is an amazing, just tremendous, strong, unbelievably intelligent person, came up with a thing. So anytime we went to a new place, we just had the packet. Here, read this, so that we didn't have to go through the trauma of explaining everything over again, which I find to be really highly irritating. And so what I would like in my world is that if I could attach an attorney to you before something really bad happened, and that person was your representative, and helped you and assisted you, I think that would make for a better world. All right, we're doing pretty good. 12:42. All right.
Any other questions for Larry? Oh, wait, there's one more.
Natalie, I'm not sure I can answer that question. What I can say is that you would want to be meeting with your client regularly and often. For me, that was critical to take advantage of today's technology with even Zoom, cell phone, text. I'm a heavy texter with clients, not to describe like complicated issues, but to stay in contact with them. I found that to be very, very important. I'd like to spend a lot of time with my clients in the beginning of a case, really listening to a client. I think it's that we say listening, and I don't think people really get it, especially attorneys. And that for the most part, I don't find attorneys to be very good listeners. So what I would do for every attorney is really teach them to be a listener. I know that I do counseling on my own that is peer-to-peer. So I take turns listening, sometimes 10 minutes each, sometimes 20 minutes each. And I'd recommend that for any attorney, and especially during that listening time, not to make any suggestions, just to listen to that person and give them that quality time. And so I didn't exactly answer your question, but it should be on a regular basis. Sometimes I make weekly appointments for folks that were standard. It might only be 5 minutes. But the greatest complaint that I think any clients have is that they can't reach their attorney. They can't talk to them, and it's really frustrating. And we need to get that one out of the way. And that's where I would try to have the greatest influence on the case. Because if you're not talking to them, how can you represent them?
Hi, Larry. My name's Adrian, and I'm from Asotin County. And I love what you're saying, but I'm curious, are you doing anything to promote any new law students that are coming out to be attorneys? Because what you're saying is fantastic, but what I see from some of these attorneys is they've got a crazy caseload and they go weeks without talking to their clients. So I was just curious if you're pursuing anything on, trying to change this entire, I don't even know what to call it, but to influence these new attorneys that are coming in that, that are definitely going to be going into government, what they could do to really be involved like this.
So I'll be speaking at the University of Washington School of Law here on November 16th. So basically, I'm trying to go around and speak to all the law schools. We also have a training program here. Right now, it's really limited, And what we did is we have a training program for 36 attorneys around the state. This is really criminally focused. So, and one of the thing I talk about is attorney-client communication. I think it's the most important skill because you have to communicate with your clients. So you have to have those listening skills. I'm also in the process of trying to figure out what is a caseload? How many cases should one person have at a time? In the criminal context, folks had over 100 cases, and these were felony cases. And how can you have the time to represent them and be able to talk to them every day? So we're looking at doing probably some form of caseload study. Only I don't have money that's been specifically appropriated by the legislature to do a caseload study. So what I'm trying to figure out is that proviso money that maybe I have a lot of to take that money out so I can do this caseload study. I know as a practicing attorney, I really struggled with caseload and that they were too high. As a supervisor, I had to manage those caseloads and cut folks off. But I really feel for what you're talking about. I am trying to do something about it. And it's just that we have justice by geography. I would like to do in the future, a place like a Soton. I would like to have a regional office where I had attorneys that were available for a few different counties so that we could provide services in Soton. One of the, well, we just need to make sure that people actually are attorneys, and someone needs to be checking on that to make sure they are attorneys from the state of Washington. That'd be very helpful. And we also, I'm very concerned about attorneys in regards to trauma. This has been a very traumatic period of time. Even just secondary trauma, what you're dealing with your clients, this has been very stressful. And what we can do to keep caseloads at a reasonable level, but also one of our problems is that we don't have a statewide system. And we really need folks to go to the legislature and maybe suggest that that we do that so that everyone has access to counsel. I hope I answered some of your questions. And Natalie, I think you wrote something else. I would love for you to meet with many of our OPD attorneys to come to every court hearing and say approved as to form consistently. Or so in years past, folks like Brett and Amelia, when it was non-COVID, would go out to different courts and sort of review folks. I am asking the legislature for another program attorney so that we can do that. Another thing we want to do in the parents representation is we want to do a training program for new attorneys. Also, what I want you to realize is that there are standards in caseloads that attorneys are supposed to comply with. Only the burden is on them. And so let's just say you're in your fourth or fifth year or your first year as an attorney. Are you going to go up to your boss and say, I got too many cases? No. When you're in your like 14th year, are you going to be able to do that? Well, I did and almost got fired, really close. So there's some issues that we need to take care of on the standards so that people can come forward on a regular basis and say, hey, this is too much. I'm doing the best I can. I can't take any more cases, and they shouldn't be under the threat of being fired or losing their contract because they're giving us that information. So that's one issue that I'm working on. But just recently, I know that when I went over to Eastern Washington, Brett followed me and went to court and was able to observe some folks. It's really important for me to get out around the state of Washington. And I would extend this invitation to you. If you want me to come to your court, send me an email so that I can come and get your perspective, and invite me. If you're detecting that there's some things that I need to learn, invite me back to more conferences so that I can learn them, with you. This is something that I want to do with you. And I want to do this together. Because right now I'm just talking words, and we need to make sure these words turn into action. I love OPD social workers. I'm crazy about them. And because of that, I want them to have the same benefits that they would as if they worked for the state of Washington. And that's one of my main priorities right now, even in the limited session that's coming up. So I really want them to be able to, continue to do that amazing work, but also be able to do things you need to do, which is like pay your rent, get food, and pay for some of those health benefits that you need in order to continue this work. So I want, in my perfect world, I want more social workers. Absolutely. Oh, I didn't give out my email address yet. I'll do that. I'll put it in the chat. There we go. All right. Well, thank you, Stacy, and everybody, and thank you, Ryan, for giving me this opportunity to get to know you and to share information about what we're doing here at the Office of Public Defense. I'm hoping, since I've been here, we've grown by 6 to 8 new employees, and I hope in 10 years we're going to have an office in Eastern Washington, because I think that's important. But hopefully there are going to be hundreds of us. So it's great to be here.
Well, thank you very much, Larry. We really appreciate you taking the time and coming and meeting with all of us and talking with our volunteers. And we look forward to helping you enact your vision for the future. So thank you so much.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome. See you next time.